Hi, I'm Julia from Springboard, and I'm here today with Alexa, a product designer at Zendesk and a YouTuber. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to sit down and share some insights about UX design.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, how did you become a UX designer?
I was playing college basketball in Wisconsin while studying graphic design, and it didn't work out, which really sucked and was not what I ever thought would have happened. But it didn't work out. And so there was this moment in my life where I could sort of like restart and move out to San Francisco and go to a design school instead of a public school. And I took that opportunity, and it was absolutely life changing. It was within my second semester at California College of the Arts, which is the college I ended up transferring to, that I figured out that I wanted to be a product designer or UX designer. And uh, I think I figured that out because I was I had this one class. It was called Interaction Design 1. It was the last class of the day after doing 3 classes prior to that. All the classes that I took that day were 3 hours long, with about an hour break in between. I think it ended up being like 11 hours. So it was the last class. So I think it was like 7:30 to 10:15 that I took this interaction class, and in that class, I had never felt that energized, or I hadn't felt that energized in a really long time. Certainly not about anything else design related. And so that's when I knew that I wanted to be a product designer, and I just hit the ground running after that.
It's a really, honestly, like super inspiring story because a lot of people, it takes them a long time to figure out like what it is for them that really gets them going.
Yeah.
And So with that, like, what's your favorite thing about being a product designer?
So as a product designer, I think something that we're always focused on is like trying to bring it back to understanding the customer and like what they're thinking, what their needs are. And so I think that's that's what I really get excited about. It's like trying to humanize something that may not intuitively be so.
Can you share about what a typical workday might look like for you?
This question's kind of tough. I think it's like tough because every day is sort of a bit different. I think it's actually a little bit more useful to look at it within a week, because there's a lot of like recurring meetings and things that happen weekly that help feed into the product design process. For example, we have weekly critiques, and I'll have them actually sort of have 2 to 3 a week with different teams, and they're always recurring. There's one with just product designers, like the San Francisco product designers, and there's another one with more of like a core team. So we have folks calling in designers calling in from Melbourne in Australia or Singapore in Portland, and we'll do critiques with that group. It's more of like a product focused team. So we all work on like a similar area of the product. And then the third is with my product managers and the front end engineers I work closely with. And we'll sometimes loop in back end engineers too, depending on where we are in the process. And so those are like super important touch points within the week that I focus on as a product designer. Besides that, there's a lot of just like heads down designing. Depending on which phase we are in the process, it's going to be different. A lot of emails, a lot of putting together presentations or different types of documentation, which is I think is a super valuable skill to have and maybe a little bit underrated. Being able to document and communicate design work is super critical, and especially for someone like me who works on a very international team. There's a lot of back and forth between time zones and different cultures and different like areas within the product, and so it's really important for us to be documenting and like simplifying down a lot of the decisions that we're making to be able to hand it off and communicate it to people all the way across the world.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It sounds like within your role or someone in your role has a lot going on at any given time and a lot of
Mhm.
responsibility and different skills to like try and grow. And so, um, what advice would you give to someone who's interested in becoming a product designer?
There's gonna be like some hard skills I could suggest. Maybe I follow up with that, but you really are gonna have to want it. Like you have to be able to put your whole like all of yourself into it. And it's not to say you can't like work your other job while you're doing this, but like you're gonna have to be very organized with your time, be able to schedule in a lot of time to spend with this sort of stuff, because a lot of it comes down to repetition. With anything that seems scary from the beginning, you have to approach it step by step and not look at it in the full picture, because it can seem really scary and unfamiliar. And maybe there's this, maybe for example, there's a paragraph with tons of jargon in each sentence. Well, you shouldn't look at the whole paragraph. Take it sentence by sentence. Okay, what's this one sentence mean? Really just deconstruct it and try to figure it out by any means necessary. And once you've gotten that, move on to the next, right? I mean, I think it's kind of like a metaphor, but I think that'd be my approach. You don't have to look at it in the full picture. Like, break it down, take it step by step, and then put the full thing together.
What is your favorite part about the design process?
I think before I would have said actually making the designs, like piecing together the pixel perfect designs. Maybe when I first started out, like I loved doing that. Um, and also when I was in school, like I loved a lot of the very early stage, diving deep into the problem pieces of UX design. Like, we have to define the problem. Is it really a problem? How do we know it's a problem? Like all that sort of stuff. I still love doing both those things. I think maybe where I'm at right now, and maybe this ties into why I like making videos on YouTube, but I really love communicating and trying to, communicate design and make sure that we're creating the right documentation and connecting the right people and um, putting those pieces together.
And so you just mentioned about how there's so many different aspects of the design process and how you're still learning some components of it. Is there a particular aspect of it that you've found particularly like challenging, and like how did you overcome um, that aspect of the design process to continue on with what you're doing?
I think a lot of maybe more business related or data, like hard data science related work has always felt a little bit more challenging for me. It's not my background. I studied graphic design in college, and so I think those areas felt a little scary. Even something that can start to get more technical can feel a little scary. And again, I think it's about creating relationships with, if you have a job, meeting people within the company who can help educate you about those areas, or finding someone out in the world who can.
So, pivoting a little bit away from the design process, one of the questions I want to ask you is about research, because it's like a huge part of design in general, regardless of what sort of facet of it you're in. So, can you tell me a little bit about how you go about like synthesizing research findings and presenting them to key stakeholders to get them to believe in like the designs that you're trying to push forward and advocate for what you're doing?
I think my approach is I always try to tackle things in a way that's different, or I really want to capture someone's attention. So if we have to communicate design research to stakeholders, for example, if typically it's going to be this really dry, like slideshow presentation handoff thing, well, let's try to approach it from something like more engaging. And so I think there's different ways you could approach this. But I think that's what I would get excited about. Maybe you can't always do that. Maybe you're not actually always presenting your research to like high stakes execs. I think ultimately what's important is that the information gets communicated to your team. So this is probably the engineers on your team who may not be present for the research, actually doing the research, but it will help them better understand our customers and empathize with what their needs are, and understand why we're building the product in the way we are and why certain design decisions are necessary. So making it consumable for them in like their language, whatever that is going to be important.
Seems like it's really just all about knowing your audience when it comes to presenting. And another thing I wanted to ask you about were all the different design tools available. If you had to pick one design tool that you couldn't live without using, what would it be and why?
Interesting. Okay. I love post-it notes. I also made a video about this. Um, if we're talking about any tools, like software tools or non, like the post-it notes are totally one of my favorite, because it's really easy. You just carry it around in your pocket or to a meeting, or like on your desk at home like me, and you can easily write down thoughts and ideas. And I think, I mean, maybe maybe you could take it as a joke, but maybe not, because I think what's really important is that you have thoughts in your head, questions, ideas, whatever it is. uh, it's one thing to have it in your head, but it's another thing to put it down on paper, because that helps you visualize it and remember it and think about it again, and also refine it. So like really make it better, make it maybe more detailed, or also like a more clear thought you communicate to someone else. Anyway, I love taking notes. I think it's super important. So that would be my tool of choice. We're talking about like software tools. That's a whole other thing. And it's hard to say like which one would be my favorite, because they're always constantly evolving. And I think like, so what, I may have a favorite tool, but depending on where I work or who I work with, like that's what's going to determine what tools I use. And so more important than what tools I like should be what tools work best for within the team, within the situation, within the company that I'm working. And my process, I can apply it to those different tools.
What would you say makes a great product designer?
As a product designer, you need to be a generalist. So you have to be able to know all of these different areas of the product design process, from defining the problem, understanding the problem, making sure it's the problem, the research involved in that, to um, being able to brainstorm and come up with solutions to that problem. There's a lot of iteration, um, sort of like putting pen to paper and sketching stuff out. Doesn't have to be great sketches, but being able to take what's in your head and put it into something physical, um, present that in a critique, and be able to take feedback and apply that to the design, and go through that process over and over again until it's ready, until we've come up with the solution we want to move forward with. Right, that next phase is actually designing the final pixel perfect designs, creating prototypes of animations and interactions if it's necessary to communicate the design to the engineering team, working with engineering, handing that off to them, creating all the documentation necessary to work with them on implementing it, and then also working with product management, following up after it's released. Hey, did we actually solve the problem? If not, why? If yes, what's next? Like, how do we continue to improve it? That's the full spectrum. You can always become like really expert in one area, but I think a product designer in the Bay Area, you're gonna have to understand all those different areas.
The last thing is, do you have any like plugs or anything you'd like to share, or people tuning in, like where can they find you online and
Yeah.
stay connected and with what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, the main side project I'm working on is my YouTube channel. So I'd love it if you'd go like and subscribe to my channel. You can find it at, if you search "Hello, I'm Alexa," I should be right there. I'm also very active on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is at Alexa Lee _H. It's Alexa LEIGH_H. It's my middle name. I'm on Twitter too, same as Instagram, but no underscore. Yeah, come say hello. I'd love to chat. I mean, that's why I'm on YouTube. I wanted to expand the amount of people I was talking to about product design to outside of San Francisco. So find me on there.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. This is great. Yeah.